For this lesson, we have two main objectives. We'll start off by discovering the scenario manager, and then we'll move on to apply the what if as well as a consolidation function. So starting off with this information-packed lesson, the scenario manager. The scenario manager is a great feature for comparing multiple sets of data within a worksheet. In this lesson, we'll discover how this feature can help us make decisions, hopefully the right ones. The scenario manager is a part of the 3 what-if analysis tools which can be found in Excel. Now the great news is that this tool is already built in. It's a great tool to see exactly how something may have an impact on your results. And the best part is it's without even changing the actual data. It allows you to substitute the input values for a maximum of 32 cells. So this means that you can view different scenarios or input values all at the same time. In today's example, we will imagine that we're working as big promoters for a big event. We'll have to produce a show that will generate a very lucrative profit. So we need to consider different things, such as costs, revenue, and many more. But how exactly would we go about using the scenario manager? So first off, once we have our data on our Excel spreadsheet, we'll go to the Data tab, select our What If Analysis tool, select the Scenario Manager, add all the different scenarios, and of course, last but not least, we're able to summarize all our scenarios too. But now that we know exactly how to do it, let's have a look at this actually being done in Excel. So here we have 2 groups of data referring to a boxing event. In the first group, you can see the costs, and in the second group, we can see the revenue. So as we said, imagine you're working for a big promotion company, and you would like to calculate all the profits or possible losses in different scenarios. We will explore 3 different scenarios today, and the best way to do this is to use our tool called Scenario Manager. But remember, before we do anything, we need to analyze our data. We need to understand exactly what the data on the sheet is telling us. This will allow us to manipulate the data in order to get the results which we want to. So this data is for a big boxing event between 2 famous boxers. So let's say Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder. Now they are British and American boxers respectively. The company has decided that it wants to rent the venue MGM in Las Vegas. Now for the cost of this venue, it will be $5 million. Now this is a magnificent place for such an incredible event. Now the capacity of the venue is 15,020 people, but it could seat up to 17,000. We also need to include the money which we need to pay for the boxers. So let's say we're going to pay the boxers $10 million. So remember, this can be split according to who wins the match. Could be 50-50, 60-40, but it really doesn't matter at this point because this is a hypothetical situation. But did you know that the numbers are actually not so unrealistic? This number was calculated according to what they were paid for previous fights, and it can be all the way up to 50 million. Now the remainder of the money can always be allocated to pay-per-view and other promotions too. Next we have the lighting, we have the ticketing, security, and the insurance. Now as you can see, the insurance is 10% of the rental fee. And we can also sum all the costs to see if we have a profit or a loss. Now the revenue cost you see over here, specifically for the food and beverage as well as the merchandising, was calculated on the average person spending about $80 on food and beverages and $50 on different merchandise. But remember, this is once again just an estimate. So now that we understand our data a little bit better, before we start calculating the different scenarios, we can already see that there are some formulas within this spreadsheet. So we want to make sure we understand exactly how the different cells are calculated. Now, if you want to see the different formulas, there's a simple shortcut. You can simply click on Control and the hyphen, which is just above your tab next to your 1. This shows us exactly how different cells were calculated, and it gives us a better idea of what goes where. So like we said, the food and beverage as well as the merchandising is calculated according to our estimate that they will spend an average of $80 on food and beverage and $50 on merchandising. If you use your shortcut once again, these numbers will disappear. So we need to start by selecting the data which we need to input into our scenario manager. So remember, these are all the variables which are likely to change. Once you've selected all your data, you can go over to the Data tab. Select your What If analysis and we go to our Scenario Manager. When you click on your Scenario Manager, a dialog box will appear. Here we can see no scenarios have been defined, so we need to choose to add different scenarios. So firstly, we can add our very first scenario. So let's call this Original. So these are all the original values we are currently working with. On the second part of it, you can see the cells which have taken into consideration. So if you click on that, you'll see all the marching ants around the cells which you have selected. You're also more than welcome to add a comment. If you don't want to comment, you can remove it too. And as these are our original values, we want to make sure that no one can make changes to these values. So therefore, we'll keep the Prevent Change box clicked. Once you're satisfied, click OK. Once we've clicked OK, we can see all the different values per the cells. But now this makes it a little bit tricky. So as you can see, the seating is at B4, but it doesn't exactly say seats next to it. The same goes for all the other values, where it gives you the cell reference instead of the name. But that's okay, just make sure that you're keeping an eye out and everything is alright. Now the second tricky part is even if we scroll down, the numbers still remain at 1 to 5 on the left-hand side. So this may be okay if you only have 5 different values. But of course, when we have more, we need to calculate how many 5s there are to make sure that we have selected all the information that we need. Once you've reviewed all your information, you can click OK. So those are our original values. So now we want to create our next one. So our next scenario, and this time we're going to say low. So let's say for this example, the sales were a lot less than we expected. Now this may be due to poor managing, this may be due to poor marketing, we don't really know. But for whatever reason, the sales are not as good. Remember, this information can always change, so we do not need the Prevent Changes box we ticked. And we'll click OK. So for this example, let's say that the average person spent only $20 on merchandising and $30 when it came to food and beverages. And as we said, the marketing wasn't so great. So unfortunately, when it came to ticketing, then it was a lot less than we expected. So let's say it was only $10,000. Now that's a lot less, but you will just see the differences here. Once you've made all your changes, once again click OK. Then we can add another scenario. So this time our scenario is going to be medium, so in the middle between the two. Once again, changes can occur, clicking OK. So let's say the average person spent $40 when it came to merchandising, and they spent $70 when it came to food and beverages. Now let's say the ticketing prices remained exactly the same, but unfortunately, only 10,000 seats were filled. So that will change things too. Once we're happy, we press OK. And last but not least, let's imagine we have a wonderful event and things are a lot higher than what we expected. So again, we can make sure changes can happen and we click OK. So in this scenario, we say that we actually sold out all 17,000 seats. They ended up spending $100 on merchandising because the event was such a success. But let's just keep the merchandising the same. Once again, we click OK. Now here you can see that all your scenarios have been added to your box. Now just before we show you this, let's say that you want a summary of it. So you can easily click on summary and see exactly which summary you would like. Would you just like a scenario summary, or would you like a pivot table report? Now you can see Excel is extremely clever. And as you look at the cell B20, you can see the marching ants around that cell. This means that Excel is looking at the total profits or losses. And of course, that's the summary we want. So once we're satisfied, we click OK, and a new table will appear. In this new table, we can see the results of all our different scenarios. Now, once again, unfortunately, you may notice that it doesn't give you exactly the names which we're looking for. But of course, there's no need to worry about this. You can always copy and paste those to make it a lot easier for you in order to see your summary the way that you need it to be seen. Here you may have noticed that there's minus and plus signs next to the table. So if we click on the minus sign, it's going to take all the noise away and you can just quickly see a summary of all your different results. So we have our original values, which is the same as our current values. We have low, medium, and high values too. But now let's pop back to our scenario manager. Remember, we went to our what if analysis and clicked on the scenario manager. When we have selected all our scenarios, instead of going to summary, we can also click on show. And here we can select showing each of our different scenarios. And remember, it's not changing any of the information, but simply showing us what could happen. So this is a great tool to predict the worst, the medium, and the best outcome for the event. So let's say your boss asks you, how do you think this event is going to go? You can give him all the different scenarios. That way, you can make the correct decision whether to go ahead with the event or not. But now let's move on to our second topic for today. Our second topic is a data table. We will learn how to use a data table with different variables. We can also see how useful it is when it comes to automizing jobs in Excel. For our example today, we'll be reviewing the purchase of a house. And remember, this could be quite a challenging thing, as there's many different variables and many different things we need to pay off. But this could easily also be applied to the purchase of a car, a laptop, or even repaying any loan. Remember, you can always personalize your files and adapt the numbers to your specific circumstances. In general, the what-if analysis tools allow us to change the values in some cells and to test how the changes can affect the formulas on a worksheet. Now remember, Scenario Manager and data tables are all part of the what-if functions. Therefore, their definitions may be the same, but the steps may be different too. So having a look at the steps, we go into our Data tab, once again to the what-if analysis, but this time we're going to choose our data table and choose the variable which you would like to use. So here you can see your beautiful house which you are about to purchase. So let's pop straight over to Excel and see if this house is affordable and if we can buy it. So here's all our information. So first we will start off with the inputs. Here we can see the cost of the house, the down payment, the interest rate, the year's repayment, as well as the payments per year. As there are 12 months in the year, we could just assume that the payments per year will be 12. Now, of course, we needed to borrow some money in order to make sure that we could buy this beautiful house. So this is the difference between the cost of the house and the down payment which you've made. Here we have the monthly rate. Now, this is the annual interest rate divided by the number of periods. And the number of payment periods will be how long you need to pay for it. So this will be 20 years times 12. And that will give us a total value of 240. And now based on your monthly payment, this is calculated by the PMT function. So the PMT is equal to B10, B11, and subtract B9. So in other words, your monthly payment is your interest rate, the number of periods, subtracted by the amount which you borrowed from the initial loan, which was 210,000. So now remember, you already gave the bank a down payment of 40. So that's why you will still have a negative amount displayed, because you still need to pay the rest. So as we can see in our calculations, our monthly repayment will be 1,272.56 cents. The total loan repayment, which will be the amount which needs to be repaid over the next 20 years. And of course, The interest rate is the amount repaid by the borrower after 20 years, and this will give us the total amount. Now that we understand all our data, we're ready to move on and see if we can afford this house. Now, let's say for our example, we don't really want to repay the house within 20 years. So we want to see what the monthly contributions will be for the different times. So we could simply do this by creating a table. So here we'll say values of repayment, and that will just simply be the name of our table. When we have our values, then we want to see how many years we're going to pay it off in. So let's start off with 10 years or 15 years. And let's go all the way up to how much we'd repay it over if we were to repay it over a time period of 45 years. So then we'll have our first cell, which is equal to the monthly repayment we're currently repaying. Then our second cell will be equal to the total loan repayment. And of course, our last cell will be our total interest which has been paid. So now let's make our table a little bit more pretty. That way we can see our values clearly displayed. So now we can select our table and use our what if analysis. Going over to our data tab, we click on what if. This time we want to use table data. Remember, we are depending our data on the column. So therefore we will have our column input cell and will be based on repayment years, which in this case will be 20 or B5. Click OK. Then you'll see all your values will appear within your data analysis box. So first we can start off by making sure that these are all in the correct values. So we can say currency. And of course, if we need to find the correct currency, then we can find it in our format cells. So whichever currency you're working with, whether it be euros, you can simply select it and click OK. And then we can see, are our values the same? We can always double check the information this way. So here we can see that our interest rate, as well as the total repayment for the loan, and the monthly repayment is exactly the same. So now by having a look at this table, you are able to see what is affordable for your monthly income. Are you able to pay off your house within 10 years? Maybe 15. Or maybe you need to even spend a little bit more time paying the house off. And are you willing to do that? So this is a great tool to use to see if you're making the right decision in purchasing that house at that time in your life. Maybe you're not ready just yet. But remember, this data tool does not only apply to just buying a house. You can use many other different scenarios too. Maybe paying off a loan, whether it be a study loan, or even paying off a brand new laptop. Now this brings us to our third topic for today, our data consolidation. So data consolidation helps you to consolidate the data when it comes from separate worksheets. Now it takes the data all the way over to a master worksheet, or it can take the data over to a different workbook or master workbook if you like. In simple terms, it takes all the data from a series of sheets or workbooks and brings it all together within one worksheet. But now how do we do this? We'll go over to our data ribbon. Then we'll click on Consolidate, highlight what we want, and click Add. Once we've added all the information, it will take it over to our final worksheet. But now this seems relatively easy, doesn't it? So let's go over to Excel and see exactly how this works. So here we have a blank sheet. And what we'd like to do is to consolidate all our data from period 1, period 2, and period 3. So as you can see or may have noticed in the different periods, we have 4 months with 5 different products. Now luckily the tables look very similar. It contains the same products for 4 different months. So we can actually assume that our data comes from exactly the same data set. Now the consolidation filter enables us to combine all of this information into one worksheet. So therefore we can see the full year instead of seeing the periods one by one. So we go over to our blank sheet. We select the cell which we would like our consolidation to appear in. Click on your Data tab. From there, we go over to Consolidation within our Data Tools. Click on Consolidate. Here we'll have our dialog box appear. First and foremost, you can see many different functions. These functions are count, average, max, min, and you have a few more. You're always more than welcome to go play with those. Most importantly, we have our reference. So this is the data set which we would like to work with. So for example, we would like to start on period 1, and we can select all our data. There we can see our whole table has been selected. Now we need to add this information. Then we go over to period 2, we do exactly the same, period 3, and add once again. Now lucky for us, we can see that the same data set is in the same number of cells. But in the case that there is more data, you can always click and highlight all the cells. They don't need to look exactly the same. Now once we selected all the periods, we can see that there are labels in the top row as well as in the left column, so we select both. Once we're satisfied, we click OK. So here we're able to easily see all the information as it's now placed together within a 1-year period. Remember, you're always more than welcome to add a different format to make sure that it looks nice and pretty, but that's entirely up to you. But now what would happen, for example, as we are using the sum function, if all of the months were exactly the same? So let's go over to our different data sets, and from there, we click on the different periods, and we say that all of them are from January through to April. So we're going to create a new consolidation table. And by clicking OK, you will see that your table appears. But remember, as the months are exactly the same, and we use the sum function, then we can see it's the sum of all the months together for the different products. There are so many different ways which you can use this consolidation tool. It doesn't only have to be for money. So for example, let's say you're hosting an event and you need to know how many chairs there are, or how many glasses, plates, or even tables. Remember, we can't always tell the exact future, but by using these different tools in Excel, it can help us to see what the best and the worst case scenario may be too. So now it's your turn. For your lesson challenge, I would like you to go and practice consolidating data yourself. And you're more than welcome to use many other functions, such as the average, count, min, or even the max. It's entirely up to you. I'd also like you to go ahead and pick your dream house off the internet and see how much you're more likely to pay on your bond or your mortgage repayment. Keep practicing and advancing your skills.